When Karoline Leavitt told Jasmine Crockett to go back to the zoo live on air, many expected immediate outrage. But what Jasmine said instead stunned even her toughest critics. The lights were glaring, cameras focused, and 4 panelists sat around a polished desk on a Thursday night episode of Nation View, one of the most popular live political shows in the country. It was supposed to be another heated discussion, the kind where people interrupt each other, make sharp remarks, and maybe get clipped for social media. But that night, something happened that crossed a line. Jasmine Crockett, the Democratic representative from Texas, had just begun making her point about racial profiling and the deep inequalities in police stops. She was calm, not loud or angry, just clear and direct. "When you look at the data," she said, "this is not just about opinions. It's happening again and again. And for people like me, we don't need a report to understand it. We live it." That's when Karoline Leavitt leaned back, let out a small breath, and gave a smirk that said more than any word could. Then she spoke, quietly, like she thought no one would hear it. "Go back to the zoo." It was unmistakable, sharp, cruel, and it sliced through the air like broken glass. At first, there was confusion. The host blinked. A producer near the edge of the set instinctively stepped forward. A sound tech looked up, his mouth half open. Then someone whispered, "Did she just—" Jasmine sat motionless. Her hands did not shift. Her face stayed still. But her eyes, they locked onto Karoline's, as if she had known this moment would come. No one spoke for 4 long seconds. The silence was not awkward. It was heavy. It said everything no one else dared to. Then Jasmine drew in a breath, small, steady, and said, "Karoline, I've been called worse by better." The host blinked again. Someone shifted at the desk. The show was still live. Millions were watching. Jasmine leaned in just slightly, voice unwavering. "I will not spend my time explaining why your comment is vile. I know why you said it. And more importantly, so do you. But I will say this because little girls who look like me are watching tonight." She looked straight into the camera. "You are not animals. You are not anyone's punchline. You do not come from cages. You come from strength, from people who survived the unimaginable and still stood tall. You have worth. You always have." The room stayed silent, but the air had changed. No longer frozen, it now felt electric. Karoline said nothing. She glanced to the side, her fingers tapping nervously on the desk, eyes darting toward her publicist off camera. Jasmine turned back to the panel, finishing her thought. "When people say the quiet part out loud like that, it's not a slip. It's a mirror." The host, clearly shaken, tried to shift the segment to a break, but the moment, whether damage or truth, had already landed. The show cut to commercial. But the story did not end there. Behind the scenes, the studio erupted, not in noise, but in movement. Producers rushed onto the floor. The host whispered urgently into his earpiece. A security guard near the stage looked unsure, frozen between routine and shock. Karoline reached for her water but fumbled the cap, her hand trembling. She said nothing. Jasmine remained seated, composed. Her fingers touched lightly as though she held something delicate. Her breathing was calm, but her mind raced, too fast to catch every thought. A young assistant, maybe 25, approached her. Unsure. "Would you like to step off set for a moment?" Jasmine turned slowly. "No, I'm okay." "Are you sure?" She nodded. "I've been here before, just not with this many cameras." The assistant hesitated, then nodded and walked away. Across the room, Karoline's team gathered in a corner, whispering in frantic tones. Phones lit up. Messages flew. A statement was already being written. Even as Karoline remained quiet, now realizing that one careless sentence would follow, her far longer than she expected. In the control room, a senior producer watched the playback. "She said it," the producer muttered. Clear as day, no stumble, no sarcasm, every word was caught. The segment had not even finished airing before clips hit X, TikTok, and YouTube. Viewers had recorded it directly from their TVs. The DIA insult, Jasmine's answer, her steady stare. The cameras close shot. Within 10 minutes, it was trending in 8 major cities. By the time the show came back from break, no one was talking about police stops anymore. They were all talking about that moment. Back on set, Jasmine was asked if she wanted to continue. She looked at the host, then at Karoline, who still had not spoken. "I will," she said, "but only if the next part is about real issues, not distractions." The host, visibly unsettled, agreed, but Jasmine did not go after Karoline. She did not escalate. She did not ask for an apology or try to use the moment for power. Instead, she shared a story. "When I was 9, she began, my teacher refused to hang my photo on the wall with the others. She said my braids looked messy." She paused. "I came home in tears. My grandmother sat me down and said, 'There are people who want you to believe you belong behind fences. Don't help them build it.'" Jasmine let those words sit. "Since then, I have known that every insult is not just aimed at me. It's for everyone watching, especially those who think silence is their only option. It is not." No one interrupted. Karoline kept her gaze straight ahead, hands pressed to her mouth. The show ended quietly. No summary, no witty sign-off. Just the credits and the stillness that follow something real. But Jasmine's words did not disappear with the music. They echoed. They spread. They were picked up by people across the country who heard more than just a comeback. While the cameras shut off, the internet lit up. It was not going to sleep. By the time Jasmine got to her car, her phone had already frozen twice. Not from the battery, but from too many alerts, texts, messages, missed calls, tagged videos. Some were from friends checking in, some from reporters. One was from her college roommate, someone she had not spoken to in 12 years. She sat in the passenger seat, screen glowing in her lap, untouched. Her driver, Tony, a quiet man in his late 50s, glanced back in the mirror. "You okay?" She looked up. "Yeah, just tired," he nodded. "Want music?" "No," she said gently. "Not yet." Across the country, screens in diners, waiting rooms, barber shops, and homes had shown the same thing. By 9:48 p.m., someone had uploaded a full HD video of the exchange to YouTube. It reached 250,000 views in 30 minutes. That clip was also posted to X, where one user captioned it, "This is what grace under fire looks like." Reactions poured. Some furious, "I cannot believe she said that on live TV. Fire her now." Some weary. "Every time we talk about real problems, they try to dehumanize us." Still, in 2025, others reflective. "I never agreed with Jasmine Crockett on anything before tonight." But that was real leadership, real composure. Not all feedback was kind. Karoline's defenders scrambled. Some claimed she was misheard. Others said the clip was edited. One person even argued it was meant figuratively. But it was too late. The audio was clean. The words were there. Even many of Karoline's usual allies looked uneasy. A few conservative pundits issued vague calls for civility, carefully avoiding her name. Then came the memes. The internet does not sleep. Screenshots of Jasmine's stare, text captions, reaction clips, a zoom in on her line, "I've been called worse by better." That phrase began appearing everywhere, on shirts, pins, hoodies. One Etsy seller had 600 orders before dawn. In the back seat, Jasmine finally began scrolling through a few posts. She was not smiling. She did not feel like she had won. It was just another moment in a long line of moments. She called her mother. "I'm okay," she said when her mom picked up. "You sure?" "Yes." Her mom let out a long breath. "You know," she said, "your great-grandfather could not even look a white woman in the eyes without risking a beating. And you just looked into that camera and told the truth to the whole country." "I wish I did not have to," she said softly. "I know, baby," her mother replied, "but you did what only you could have done." At that moment, Karoline sat by herself in a hotel suite in downtown Philadelphia, where the show had just been recorded. Her phone kept buzzing, but not for good reasons. Her manager had messaged 3 times. "Say nothing, do not post, let me handle this." Even her mother, who rarely commented on political matters, sent a short message that hit harder than any headline. "Karoline, why would you say that?" She did not answer. She just turned off her phone and stared at the lights outside, her reflection faint in the window glass. No pre-written quotes, no media prep. Just her and the quiet. But silence does not fix anything. And tomorrow, things would only get louder. 7 hours earlier, Jasmine Crockett had been standing in front of her hotel bathroom mirror, trying to flatten a stubborn piece of hair. She was not exactly nervous, but live TV always made her check herself one extra time. The makeup artist had already left. The room still smelled of setting spray and lavender lotion. Her phone buzzed. A message from her aide, Danny. "Car downstairs, you're early if you want a quiet moment before we begin." Jasmine stared at her reflection. She did not look like someone about to go viral. No speech hidden in her jacket. No clever lines practiced in the mirror. Just a small pile of handwritten notes in her purse. Facts she wanted to remember if things got tense. As always before a big moment, she whispered quietly to herself, "You have been through worse. This is not new." She remembered her first time in a courtroom, not as a lawyer but as a child, sitting next to her uncle who was fighting for custody of her cousin. The hard benches, the judge who never looked up, the lawyer from the other side who kept saying things like, "those people" and "that neighborhood." She did not understand it all back then. But that moment lit something inside her, a quiet fire, the kind that does not flare up. It just keeps burning. As the car moved through Philadelphia, Jasmine looked out the window. A dad walked beside, his daughter, both in matching jackets. A delivery worker pedaled past on a bike. A woman yelled into her phone outside a store. Life went on. She thought about what she would say on the show, not just the numbers or policies, but the reasons behind the arguments. Why some people feel these issues in their bones, and for others it all seems distant. In the green room before the show, Jasmine sipped water and read over a few notes. Karoline entered 10 minutes later, flanked by 2 assistants. She said nothing, avoided eye contact. Jasmine was not surprised. They had been on panels together before, but never like this. Karoline always entered like she was walking into a match she had already decided to win. Always dressed sharp, always a little smug. Jasmine had figured people like her out long ago. They did not scare her, they annoyed her, but they never shook her. A producer walked in. 5 minutes, ladies. We're going live right from the first segment, no warm-up. Jasmine nodded. Karoline glanced at her phone, then it began. They were led into the studio, bright lights, cold air. Jasmine sat down, adjusted her mic, and looked, not at the host, not at the crowd, but straight at the camera lens. She knew millions would be watching. She felt steady. Karoline leaned over just before the mics turned on and said, "Let's try to keep it civil this time." Jasmine gave a faint smile. That's always the goal, right? She had no idea how that night would shift the whole conversation, that a single careless insult would make her response echo in classrooms and living rooms for years. But she did. Know that when her time came to speak, she would not hesitate. Across the studio, someone else was preparing too. But her words would change the script in ways she never expected. Karoline Leavitt was known for her quick comebacks and sharp remarks. She knew how to stir just enough to stay trending and keep her base excited. To her, politics was strategy, performance. But what she said that night was not part of the plan. When she said, "Go back to the zoo," she was not thinking about the cameras or the mic. It came out on impulse, a reflex she did not even know was there. And the moment it left her mouth, she felt something she had not felt on air in a long time. Regret. Not guilt. Not yet. Just that sinking feeling you get when you know you cannot take something back. After the show, she locked herself in her room. Her phone would not stop lighting up. Missed calls, urgent emails. Her communications director, Alan, had texted 3 times before she even got upstairs. "Do not tweet. We need to talk first. This is bad." She poured a drink, sat on the edge of the bed, and listened to the city outside. She stayed quiet. Down the hall, Alan paced in his own suite, phone to his ear. "Her face is everywhere," he told the media consultant. "This is not just offensive, it confirmed something ugly. That is a whole different thing." They thought about releasing a pre-written apology, something vague. But they knew it would not be enough. The clip was clear, the words too specific. And people from both sides of the political aisle were calling it disgusting. By morning, major donors had pulled out of events Karoline was supposed to lead. A state college canceled her forum. A talk show dropped her from its next episode. It all started to fall apart. Her manager insisted on a public statement, remorseful but carefully worded. She refused. "If I apologize," she snapped, "it will look like I am saying I am racist." Alan stared at her. "You said something racist, Karoline. Whether you meant it or not, this is not about appearances anymore, it just is." She said nothing. He spoke again, more slowly. "You can try to fix this, or you can double down and make this your legacy." She swallowed. "They are going to cancel me either way." Alan shook his head. "No, they are going to remember you, and you get to decide for what." She did not sleep. Her confidence, usually rock solid, had cracked. She thought back to high school in Portsmouth. The quiet jokes, the comments kids made when no one else was listening. She used to laugh, not because they were funny, but because it was easier. Maybe that was the problem. She never questioned any of it, just went along. But now those old thoughts had surfaced, and they shocked the country. She watched the clip, again on her phone. Jasmine's face, the pause, her own voice saying something she could not unsay. Jasmine did not shout, did not perform. She just told the truth. And that hurt more than yelling ever could. Karoline shut off the screen. While she sat trying to control the damage, the rest of the country was already awake and reacting. The morning after the broadcast, things did not cool down. They heated up. Cable news led with the story. Not polls or foreign affairs, but that clip. That comment. That stare. In Phoenix, a civics class paused when the teacher rolled in a screen. "We're discussing this," she said, "because this is the world you're stepping into." In Baltimore, an older man handed his barber his phone and said, "I've heard worse, but never lived like that," and never answered with so much grace. In Madison, a youth group at a church watched the full segment. No one spoke until the end. Then a teen asked, "Why are people still saying things like that?" There was no easy answer. The clip spread not just because of the insult, but because of how Jasmine responded. Most people could not imagine reacting the same way, without yelling, without anger. Her calm made it more powerful and more painful. On social media, the conversation deepened. Hashtags trended, "Not from cages." "Grace under fire." "I am not your joke." People shared their own stories. Subtle insults at work, looks from strangers. Jokes that were not jokes. It stopped being just about Karoline and Jasmine. It became a reflection. In towns and cities across the country, people started asking themselves hard questions, not just about who was right, but about how much hate still lingers just under the surface, and how easily it slips out. It came out. One video showed a father and daughter sitting on their porch in Mobile, Alabama. The father had tears in his eyes as he explained to his 10-year-old daughter why those words hurt so deeply. "Because, baby, they used to put us in cages, for real, and call us animals. And sometimes the words don't feel new. They sound like old echoes." People who had never heard of Jasmine Crockett before now knew her name, not because she demanded attention, but because she stayed calm and still made everyone listen. Then came the opinion pieces. Some praised her reply as respectful and strong. Others criticized her for being too calm, saying she let Karoline off too easily. But Jasmine was not online explaining herself. She stayed quiet, watching it all unfold. She understood the risk of being too present during moments like this, of reacting too quickly. Sometimes the strength is in letting others sit with what they just heard. Meanwhile, Karoline's team rushed into damage control. That afternoon, they released a written apology. It used all the usual words: regret, misunderstood, not who I am. But there was no video, no voice, just typed words. It did not work, not even close. Even some of her longtime backers hesitated to speak in her defense. One conservative radio host said live on air, "This is not cancel culture, folks. This is called consequences." There's a difference. The weight of that moment reached beyond politics. It was no longer about left or right. It became about what people were willing to accept, and what they had finally decided to push back against. For every loud post online, there were quiet conversations happening offline. Friends talking in break rooms, grandparents shaking their heads over breakfast, teenagers whispering in locker rooms, "Did you see that video?" They were not repeating Karoline's words. They were quoting Jasmine. While the country was still reacting to what had been said, the network behind the show was starting to feel the pressure too, and they were not ready for the wave that was coming. Inside the shiny glass building of Nation View, headquarters in downtown Philadelphia, stress ran through every hallway. It was not even 10:04 a.m., and already 3 emergency meetings had taken place. More were on the calendar: producers, executives, advertisers. Everyone was tense. Internally, the video was labeled the Segment 4 incident. Emails had subject lines like "Immediate response needed" and "Crisis plan draft." The network's social media director had not left her office for hours. She was monitoring online chatter while working on 3 different public statements, each offering a different level of responsibility. The host of the show, Paul Banner, was furious. He was known for staying neutral even under stress. He had built his name on giving everyone equal airtime, but this was no longer just about fairness. He had been 5 feet away when it happened. He heard the comment live. What stayed with him was not the words. It was the silence that followed. "I froze," he admitted during the first staff meeting. "I should have said something right away. That is on me." A junior producer suggested keeping Karoline off the show until things calmed down. Another argued, "If we do that, her supporters will say we are shutting out conservatives." Someone else replied, "And if we don't, it looks like we think racism is just another viewpoint." The room went quiet. Outside their studio bubble, sponsors had already begun reacting. 3 companies pulled their ads within 24 hours. One large tech firm sent in a direct message: "We cannot support content where racial language goes unchecked." On national TV, executives debated whether to air an apology during the next episode or issue one online. The legal team warned against letting anyone speak too freely on air. But Paul stood firm. "If I stay silent, I am part of the problem." They reached a middle ground, a short statement, carefully reviewed by legal, delivered by Paul, enough to show awareness, without admitting any legal fault. That evening, the show opened without its usual theme music. Paul sat alone at the desk. He took a pause before speaking. "Last night something was said on this program that should not have been said. It was hurtful. It was wrong. And while we cannot undo it, we can take responsibility moving forward." The clip of his words spread quickly, but it did not land like Jasmine's had. It did not feel raw or honest. It felt edited, controlled, safe, viewers noticed. One wrote, "If this is what you call accountability, then you have missed the point." Behind the scenes, lower-level producers were talking about what they were not allowed to say. One even leaked an internal memo to a reporter. The memo showed that at first network leaders wanted to avoid directly mentioning race in the coverage. That leak sparked a second wave of anger. By day 3, calls for more openness grew louder. Staff writers sent an unsigned letter to the top management. They asked for clear rules on hate speech during live broadcasts. They also wanted to know whether guests like Karoline would be held accountable, or just invited back like nothing had happened. The pressure was coming from every direction. Paul pushed for a full segment, inviting Jasmine back and letting her speak freely without interruptions. The network was unsure. "Too risky," they said. "We do not know what she might say." Paul replied, "That is exactly why we should let her speak." Paul eventually responded, and Jasmine agreed to come back, but only under one condition. No rehearsed back and forth, no panel of guests, just her and Paul in a direct one-on-one conversation. The network approved, though not eagerly. They needed the viewership, and deep down they understood that ignoring her voice now would only cause more issues. But when Jasmine returned to the stage, she was not there to argue. She brought something heavier, an honest truth that no one had voiced yet. The studio was quieter than usual. No busy crew, no background talk. Just 2 chairs, 1 table, and a silence that explained itself. Jasmine Crockett entered slowly, dressed in a dark blue blazer, calm and collected. Not the practiced kind of calm, but the kind that comes from knowing exactly who you are, regardless of what others say. Paul Banner stood to greet her. Their handshake was not stiff. It held something unspoken, like quiet understanding. The cameras started rolling. No intro music, no flashy visuals, only Paul's voice. "Tonight, we are doing something different," he said. No debate, no interruptions, just room for thought and reply. He turned to Jasmine. Thank you for being here. She nodded. Thank you for the space. He leaned back a bit. You do not need me to guide this. What would you like to say? She took her time, then looked directly at the camera. I have had a few days to reflect, she said, and I want to be clear. What Karoline said was not just about me. It exposed a deeper issue that this country still has not addressed. She folded her hands. I have been in rooms where people looked uncomfortable when I entered. I have been interrupted, overlooked, turned into a joke. But what made that moment stand out was not the insult. It was how normal it seemed to the person who said it. That should concern everyone. Paul stayed quiet. He did not need to speak. Jasmine went on. See, racism does not always wear a hood or shout. Sometimes it smiles on the elevator. Sometimes it wears nice clothes and sits next to you on national TV. Sometimes it slips out when someone forgets their mic is still on. She paused. I did not clap back. I did not raise my voice. Not because I did not feel like it, but because I have learned that anger fades fast, and I need people to hear me longer than that. She glanced down for a moment, then looked up again. This is not just about Karoline. This is about all the places where someone gets spoken down to, and nobody speaks up. This is about kids, who hear words like that and think it is just a joke. This is about history repeating itself, while we pretend it is all behind us. For the first time, Paul leaned forward. You have received a lot of support, but also criticism. Some say you should have hit back harder. Others think you overreacted. What is your response to that? Jasmine looked at him. I do not need to meet hate at its level. I was taught to stand taller than that. My grandmother always said, if someone throws mud at you, don't hand them the bucket. Paul gave a small smile. Do you think anything will change? I think it already is, she said. Not everywhere, but in places. People are having real conversations now, people who stayed quiet before. Sometimes change doesn't start with noise. It starts when people look at themselves. He nodded slowly. After a short pause, Paul asked one final question. If Karoline is watching this right now, what would you say? Jasmine thought briefly, then said, I hope this shook you. Not because I want you punished, but because I want you to grow. And if this was your wake-up call, I hope you listen. Because the rest of us, we have been learning our entire lives. The show ended in silence, no applause, no recap. Just a quiet cut to black. But online, her words caught on again. Not in a dramatic way, but steadily. People reshared clips, adding lines like, this is leadership, or this is how you teach without preaching. She stayed steady. Karoline watched the whole segment from a hotel room. She did not say anything this time, but Jasmine's message was not over. The moments keep echoing long after the cameras stop. Weeks passed. The viral buzz faded, headlines changed. The internet moved on like it always does. But something stayed. In a middle school classroom in Toledo, a teacher played Jasmine's speech during a media unit. When it ended, a student asked, why did she not just yell back? The teacher paused, then replied, because real strength is not always the loudest voice. It is knowing when and how to speak. At a community center in Oakland, a pastor opened his Sunday sermon, not with scripture, but with a quote, do not hand them the bucket. The audience nodded. They got it. In a bookstore in St. Louis, folded t-shirts sat near the counter. They read, not from cages, from strength. Jasmine never chased headlines. She did not plan a press tour. She went back to work, hearings, district meetings, policy discussions. But everywhere she went, someone stopped her. Not for signatures, not for photos. Just to say, thank you. Older women hugged her, saying, you made us proud. Teenagers said, I did not know you before this, but I do now. At an airport gate, a man handed her a note scribbled on the back of a boarding pass. It read, my daughter watched. You. She asked questions we had never talked about before. Thank you for opening that door. Karoline, meanwhile, went quiet. She did not disappear, but she did not come back in the same way either. Her next media events were canceled. A planned book deal faded. A few donors shifted to safer public figures. She stayed out of sight for a while. Then one day, she showed up at a small town hall in Des Moines, Iowa. No press, no staff, just her, a mic, and 30 folding chairs. She did not talk about ratings or spin the story. She said, "I made a comment that hurt people. I do not expect everyone to forgive me, but I want to understand how serious it was. I am here to listen." Some rolled their eyes. Some crossed their arms. But a few stayed to talk. Maybe that was a start. Maybe not. Jasmine did not wait for closure. Her story was not about revenge or a comeback. It was about truth. And truth sticks. In that now well-known panel moment, she did not shift her tone. She did not raise her voice, but she changed the feeling in the room and later, around the country. Just by being still and saying what needed to be said, she reminded people what grace looks like when it is real, not scripted. She reminded people that silence after a slur is still a choice, and so is dignity. And she reminded every girl who has ever been mocked, brushed off, or talked over, that their worth is not decided by someone else's microphone. Not then. Not ever. Sometimes the strongest statement is not dropping the mic. It is holding on to, while everyone else finally stops to listen. If this story meant something to you, if it made you reflect, subscribe to the channel. We will keep sharing the stories that matter, the ones that spark thought, emotion, and growth.